Adam Schefter just released a juicy article to kick off draft week, and it's packed with insights about potential trades as we head into the 2025 NFL Draft. Among the names he mentioned, two stand out: Kirk Cousins and Jalen Ramsey. Let's dive into these players, starting with the veteran quarterback Kirk Cousins. We've talked a lot about Cousins recently, so I won't rehash everything. If you want more details, check out our video from Monday. My take on the situation is that I don't expect a trade to happen before or during the draft. I believe teams will let the draft play out first. After that, once they've had some practices, OTAs, and mini camps, they'll reassess their quarterback needs and potentially engage with the Falcons about Cousins. Now, let's shift gears to Jalen Ramsey. This name has been buzzing among Falcons fans, especially with the connection to Raheem Morris, which has sparked rumors of a possible reunion in Atlanta. Jonathan Jones from CBS Sports recently mentioned that teams like the Falcons and Raiders might be interested in Ramsey if the price is right. It's interesting to note that Ramsey signed a 3-year, $72 million extension less than a year ago, but he'll be turning 31 in October, which raises some questions about his age. However, he had an impressive run with Morris in Los Angeles, earning back-to-back Pro Bowl and All-Pro selections, culminating in a Super Bowl victory. Ramsey is healthy and started all 17 games last season. Remember, he had an injury at the start of 2023, but since joining the Dolphins, he hasn't missed a game and has remained productive. While some might think he's past his prime, he recorded 5 interceptions over the last 2 seasons. Sure, 2021 feels like ages ago, but during his time with Morris, he had 8 interceptions from 2021 to 2022 and a staggering number of pass breakups, around 34 or 35. Last year, he wasn't a liability in coverage either. If that's his B game, allowing just 546 yards and 2 touchdowns, I'd say that's still pretty solid. Now, I'm not suggesting Ramsey would necessarily start at cornerback, especially with the return of Mike Hughes and D. Alford, which indicates the Falcons are comfortable with their cornerback rotation. But what if they brought Ramsey in to play safety? He could take on a hybrid role, especially since Jordan Fuller signed a cheap 1-year deal and isn't guaranteed a starting spot next to Jesse Bates. While this offseason hasn't been the flashiest for Atlanta, and some might argue they've taken a step back defensively with certain departures, imagine if by this time next week we're discussing an Atlanta defense featuring Leonard Floyd and Mike Green starting at edge. That could change the narrative entirely. Imagine Jalen Ramsey floating between cornerback and safety, teaming up with Jesse Bates and A.J. Terrell, along with a solid veteran edge rusher like Leonard Floyd. Add in the 15th overall pick, Mike Green, and suddenly you've got a defense that looks much more promising. I'd feel a lot more confident about that defensive lineup compared to what we currently have. Now let's talk about the cost of acquiring Ramsey. I don't think it's going to be as steep as some might think. Sure, he signed a 3-year extension, which means there will be some financial hurdles to navigate. But let's be real, the salary cap is more of a myth than a reality. Just ask the Saints about that. So, I don't see the cap being a deal-breaker for a Ramsey trade. What about a future 5th-round draft pick? The Falcons can't afford to give up one of their picks in this year's draft for a player unless they're getting something back in return. For example, if they trade their 2nd-round pick, they'd need to receive a 2nd-round pick back, even if it's 10 spots later. That's not the case with Miami, so the only way to make a Ramsey trade work is to start with 5 picks and end with 5 picks, including Ramsey, while just moving back a round or 2. So, I want to hear from you. Would you make this trade? Give me a yes or a no in the comments below. Personally, I'm all in. Ramsey was fantastic under Morris out west, so why not bring that energy to Atlanta? This defense desperately needs a spark. A.J. Terrell was the only reliable corner in coverage during the second half of 2024, and Jesse Bates is a cornerstone piece for this team. Outside of those two, there's not much firepower on the defense. I'd gladly take Jalen Ramsey for a future 5th-round pick. Before we dive into more trade rumors and draft buzz, I want to take a moment to mention something exciting. Now, let's shift gears. Schefter also highlighted several players on rookie contracts who could be moved during the draft. While no offensive players seem to fit the Falcons' needs on paper, there are definitely some intriguing options to consider. Let's throw out a name: Sam Howell. If Atlanta decides to part ways with Kirk Cousins during the draft, they'd find themselves with a quarterback room featuring Emory Jones. Remember him from Florida? He signed with the Falcons back in January, and Michael Penix Jr. But if Atlanta wants a more reliable backup, Howell could be a solid option. Adam Schefter reported over the weekend that the Seahawks are open to trading Howell. They've signed Drew Lock, looking to make him the new backup for Sam Darnold, which means Howell could be available for a future 6th or 7th round pick. I'd much prefer him backing up Penix over Emory Jones. Now, as we consider these trade candidates, it's important to remember that the Falcons are working with a tight budget. They don't have a lot of wiggle room, and the players they have are too valuable to let go for a veteran. The only way they'd part with one of their picks is if they're getting another pick in return. For instance, if they trade their 46th pick, they'd want to receive something like the 60th pick back. Oh, and speaking of quarterbacks, the Falcons just signed Easton Stick while we were filming. So it looks like the Falcons are on the same wavelength, wanting to secure a better backup quarterback. Does this mean a Kirk Cousins trade is on the horizon? I'm getting a little excited here. Let's wrap this up and shift our focus back to trade candidates. Specifically, I want to highlight some defensive players the Falcons might be interested in, as that's clearly a pressing need for the team. First up is Evan Neal, a former first-round offensive lineman who hasn't quite lived up to expectations. Then there's Kayvon Thibodeau, who could be a better fit if the Giants decide to go with Abdul Carter at number 3. If that happens, Thibodeau might not have a spot in the starting lineup with Brian Burns and Carter already in place. Also on the radar are Tyree Wilson, Odafe Oweh, and Greg Newsome. Let's focus on Tyree Wilson for a moment. If you remember our pre-2020 draft coverage, we were all in on Wilson right up until the draft, but then the buzz shifted to Bijan Robinson. Wilson's career with the Raiders has been underwhelming, but he's a big guy at 6 feet 6 inches and 275 pounds who can move quickly. If the Falcons are looking for a buy low opportunity with the potential for high rewards, Wilson could be a trade target, especially if they don't go for an edge rusher in the first round and instead opt for a corner like Will Johnson. They might think, all right, we need to find an edge rusher somewhere, so let's double up in round 2. Let's talk about what the Falcons might offer for Tyree Wilson from the Raiders. My prediction? I think Atlanta will try to trade back from the 15th pick. However, they might struggle to find a willing partner. This draft isn't overflowing with talent, and the difference between the player you get at 15 and the one you get at 25 isn't as significant as you might think. For example, if you can snag Mel Williams at 15 and James Pierce at 25, you might find some folks who actually prefer Pierce over Williams. So, why would a team at 25 want to jump up to 15 and give up a valuable 3rd or 2nd round pick? While the Falcons would love to move back, I don't think they'll have much luck. If they can't trade back, their plan will need to be twofold. First, they must nail their 1st and 2nd round picks. They need to find a day 1 starter at 15 and at least a solid rotational player in round 2. With only 5 picks in total, they'll also be a prime destination for preferred undrafted free agents, UDFAs, once the draft wraps up. Many UDFAs are actually happy to go undrafted because if they get picked in the 7th round, they have no say in where they end up. But as a preferred UDFA, they can look at teams like the Falcons or Vikings, who have 9 draft picks combined, and think, I have a real shot at making the roster here. With only 5 draft picks, and 2 of those being 7th rounders, there won't be a ton of rookie competition. While it might not sound super exciting, the Falcons could be a hot spot for some of the best undrafted players. You can find valuable talent among UDFAs. Just look at Troy Anderson and Nate Landman, both of whom were undrafted but turned out to be solid contributors. Atlanta is in a great position to attract quality players who could become borderline starters. Before we wrap things up, I want to remind you that we'll be live for the NFL Draft. Make sure to tune in for our pick-by-pick analysis and some exciting giveaways. We'll go live at least an hour before round 1 and again on day 2 of the draft. So, scroll down and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already for the best free Falcons draft coverage.